Well, yeah, let's want to kick us off, Lisa.
Okay. Welcome everyone. I want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. This is just a reminder that today's presentation will be recorded and posted on the Whitburn Center's website and YouTube channel. We ask that you please keep your mics on mute. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. My name is Lisa Lewis. I'm the Administrative Manager in the Whitburn Center for Governance and Policy Research. And before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about the Whitburn Center. The Whitburn Center was established in the fall of 2021 through a generous donation from our founding benefactor, UWO alumni Jerry Whitburn. Our mission is to conduct nonpartisan, practical, applied research focused on evaluating and improving governance, professional management, and public policy in Wisconsin and beyond. Our vision is to build local government, nonprofit, and community capacity to promote the common good. To do this work, it requires bringing people together in spaces like this one to work together to share knowledge and equip public professionals with tools and resources to better understand the dynamic topic areas surrounding Wisconsin's public sector. And now Dr. Sam Larson will tell you about the MPA program and introduce our two speakers.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And thanks, folks, for joining us today. I'm going to try to share my screen. Can people see this? And is it in full screen mode, Ben and Dr. Ford? Okay, perfect. Well, I'm Sam Larson. I'm the program director for the MPA program. You can see my email address down there. I wanted to share it quick just in case any folks want to reach out after this conversation, which I'm really looking forward to. And we also have the public admin website here for you all. So I'm excited, one, that you're here today, and two, to have two of our very incredible alumni back with us, Jack and Taylor. Jack is a published author, in case folks don't know. So on some of the work that he did previously with me as a research assistant while he was in the MPA program. So I was thinking about Jack today very fondly in our many meetings during the 2020, 2021 timeframe. And so I'm excited to see him here. And Taylor, really excited to see her here as well. And I'm going to find the link to the article, Taylor, that you were featured in the ICMA kind of women in leadership space. So we have some famous alums with us today, which I'm really excited about. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, and I don't want to speak too much, which I tend to do. But I want to first tell all of you a little bit about the MPA program, and then Jack and Taylor and Dr. Ford will make things much more interesting after my little slideshow here. So just some details about our program. We've been in business since 1972. So we've had people come through our program, around 700 graduates over the last 50 years. And these folks work throughout the state of Wisconsin, but the United States and the world. I think we have MPA alums on almost every continent other than Antarctica. So from Europe to Asia, to South America, Canada. I know it's not a different continent, but we have people around the globe, which is really exciting for us. Our courses are 100% online and asynchronous, which means students can do the work anytime that works best for them. We're a really affordable program, one of the most affordable MPA programs in the Midwest. If you shop around a bit, you'll see that our credit hours are quite a bit less expensive than other comparable programs, and we do have financial aid options for students. And then I think one of the big things that we like to really hit on with our students is that all of our faculty have professional experience. So we have all worked outside of academia for different public and nonprofit organizations. And our goal is to bring that expertise into the classroom and make sure that you're getting skills that you'll need when you go out into your careers, but also just while you're working towards your careers. So, right, if you're taking budgeting, you're learning how to do public budgeting and finance, and you can apply those skills. We often hear from a lot of our students like, wow, wouldn't you know it, this just came in handy last week. Or in our strategic planning courses, students will say like, you know what, I'm in the middle of like being tasked with putting together a strategic plan for our department, and this is so helpful. So students get the skills right away that they can utilize right away, which is something that we take a lot of pride in. I know that this map is fuzzy, but I wanted to include this map. So this just gives you a sense of where our graduates are working in the state of Wisconsin in a city manager role. And so we have more than 24 city managers throughout the state of Wisconsin. There's an article that was published on this. I think it was just last spring, Dr. Ford, isn't that right? That looks at kind of our map of folks that have risen kind of to the top position within their municipalities. But we have people working in nonprofits. We have a lot of people in public health, emergency management. So people can kind of take this degree and do a lot of different things with it. And Taylor and Jack will talk a bit more about that today. And then I'll just end with this. Students can start anytime. So we have admission in fall, spring, or summer. I'm going to have Lisa send out a link to this so you have the web links, and we can post that online as well. So you can learn more about the program. You can see our admission requirements. We're still accepting applications for spring 2025. So if you're interested in applying now, you can do that, or you can just reach out to me for more information. So that's all I have for just a little snapshot of the MPA program. And from here, I'll hand it over to the more interesting people. So Dr. Ford, I'll give you the baton.
I'm not very interesting though, so I am boring, but I'll introduce the interesting people here. So basically, I got some questions, and I figured we can go back and forth, Jack and Taylor, and we can turn it over to the audience as well. But just to get us started, I'd like each of you to just tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, what are you doing? Where are you working? What's your day-to-day like? And Jack, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Well, thank you. It's good to be here as well and see everyone again. It's been a while, so good to see you all. But right now, I'm a management analyst in the city manager's office at the City of Des Plaines, which is a northwest suburb of Chicago. I think it's about 10 to 15 miles outside of Chicago. So it's an exciting municipality. There's about 60,000 residents. We have about 350 employees in the organization. And it's a full service municipality as well. So we have public works, fire, police, community and economic development, and a lot of other departments that support these key areas. So in my day-to-day role, I work and report directly to the city manager, who is Dorothy Wisniewski. She's the first female city manager in the city of Des Plaines. And for me, that was a really exciting opportunity to get to partner with someone who is historic as well as a really good leader, and someone who I really enjoy getting to know every day. So in my role, I support her however I can. It kind of varies day to day. A lot of what she does is responds to the policy priorities of the city council. And so that's what kind of influences my work. So if something comes up at a city council meeting and they want it for discussion at the next meeting, that'll kind of be my project for the next couple of weeks is, going into the budget books or going into the CAFRs and looking at, how Des Plaines compares to these other municipalities and putting forward discussion items or policy alternatives. So it's an exciting position. I never really know what's going to come up. But having a good support, good leadership from Dorothy and our city manager and our city staff makes it really enjoyable for me. So
That's awesome, Jack. And I should add, that you might, for anybody else here, you might see management analyst positions posted and wonder what it is. And I think Jack just gave a really good explanation. It's a little bit of a jack of all trades. That was a pun. It wasn't designed to be, but it was. But it's a little bit of a jack of all trades, and it really is a place where a lot of existing leadership will look for to recruit the next generation of municipal administrators and city managers. So it's a really good training ground. So it's a cool thing you're doing there, Jack. Welcome. So Taylor, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I am Taylor Zeinert, the City of Whitewater's Economic Development Director. I was previously the Chief of Staff, so I had a similar role as Jack does. However, though, they bumped me over to Economic Development at the end of April there. I was interim from January until April. My day-to-day just depends on what's going on. That's something that I love about the economic development role, is that I can be out in the community talking. This morning, I met with the this morning I had met with the local bed and breakfast in keeper, and then I bounced over to the coffee shop to talk economic development. So it's nice to have that range. I oversee the neighborhood services department as well as economic development. So what I always tell people is that I handle things from beekeeping to TIF and developers agreement, which tends to be a large range. So we do building inspections, we do the beekeeping, but we also sit with developers and we talk about multifamily units, single family homes, things of that nature. Whitewater is just an hour outside of Madison. We're home to UW Whitewater. We have about 14,000 residents, 150 employees, so a little bit smaller than Jack's municipality, but it's always interesting, always fun.
And Taylor, you have a city manager form of government, right, in Whitewater?
Correct. Yes, which is rare. Wisconsin doesn't have, I think it's less than 10. But it's interesting the different formalities and things that you can do contrary to a city administrative government.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I won't put you on the spot and ask you how old you are, Taylor, but I do want to say that one of the reasons we invited Taylor and Jack is that both of them are very young and have been incredibly successful in their careers at this age, which is really, really exciting and makes us proud. But anyways, so that's a good segue to the next question, and we'll stick with you, Taylor. And this is maybe a bit self-serving question, but how do you utilize your MPA education in your current position? Hopefully you do, but hopefully,
Yes.
hopefully it was worthwhile, but I'd love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely daily. Whether it's budgeting, I know that we had talked about the budgeting element before. We are in the budget season right now. So having those templates and having that experience was absolutely crucial. Specifically, and oddly enough, the fire department class was super helpful. I previously at the chief of staff, I oversaw the PR element of it. Before I had gotten to the city of Whitewater, they just went to referendum for their fire department bringing that on. So we had to do a whole social media campaign about the different levels and things of that nature. And I don't know if the group knows, but the local fire chief in Oshkosh teaches that course. So it was super helpful to have that knowledge so that when I met with the current fire chief here and I could ask different XYZ questions, I had that baseline knowledge. So I found that the courses were incredibly helpful, from budgeting to fire, got it all. So
Same question for you, Jack.
For me, what I use pretty much daily is the experience we got going through budget books and Dr. Ford's CAFRs. And I remember him stressing how critical they were and how important they were to like really getting an understanding of a municipality and how healthy they are based on that document. And it's a document that the Des Plaines city manager believes in a lot as well. So it's really nice to have that background of like going through that information and having an expert kind of point you to where the critical information is and how that applies, to be able to kind of go through the data and then tell the data to whoever your audience is in a really kind of consumable way. So that's something that I use a lot. And a lot of, again, my role is kind of comparing Des Plaines to other municipalities, whether that's for labor-related issues that we're dealing with, or if that's a policy alternative that we're dealing with. And so just being comfortable with those budget documents or those financial documents has really kind of given me sort of an advantage to be able to kind of look through those documents quickly and find the information that's really important. So it's nice to have that sort of basis. It makes me feel comfortable in my research.
Well, that makes me so happy. I always tell our students that budgeting is so much more important than public policy analysis, right, Dr. Larson? It's all very important, but it is. I mean, one of the exciting things is that our graduates do so many diverse things, and I think we offer so many diverse courses that you generally get something useful from just about every one of them. To your point, Taylor, about finding the fire course useful, that's awesome that you were able to get something you could utilize in the real world out of that. But so one of the, I guess, one of the reasons we really highlighted Jack and Taylor today, in addition to the fact that they're successful and we're proud of them, is that they had diverse undergraduate degrees. Taylor was political science, Jack was journalism. So we can stick with Jack here. And just curious how you ended up in the MPA world, coming from a journalism background, the extent to which that translated into, your undergrad translated into your graduate experience. Maybe the extent it didn't as well. Anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, it was definitely not a conventional path to public administration and all that. But I was a journalism major as an undergraduate, and in my position, I was writing for the student newspaper, and then I picked up a job in Oshkosh writing for a local newspaper, and I got to covering city hall and school boards, county government and stuff like that. So I thought that if I could specialize in public policy, it would give me a better understanding of what's going on at City Hall, and it would make me a more effective journalist. Um, and so I was also kind of fortunate with the timing of uh, COVID-19 and all of that. It kind of worked out for me where I could apply for graduate school, still kind of freelance as a journalist, and kind of uh, in a way like kill two birds with one stone. Uh, and After pretty much one semester, I had a sort of a mentorship course with Mark Roloff, who was the Oshkosh city manager. And for me, he's really kind of just an inspiring personality. He's someone who's like very optimistic and very passionate about his role as a city manager. And so I got a lot of influence from him, and I thought that focusing a career on city administration and getting to sort of dedicate my life to specializing in this and give back, I thought was, just really compelling for me. So within one semester, I kind of knew that I was going to be switching over to the public administration side. And so I'm really happy I did. So.
Did you find the journalism skills translate well?
Yeah, definitely being able to communicate is a really important skill, whether that's written or verbal. So uh, that's really nice, and it's also kind of nice in my current role. We have a hometown newspaper as well here in Des Plaines that's similar to the Oshkosh newspaper that I worked in there. Um, and so it's fun for me to be sort of on the other side of that dynamic now. And I have a lot of gratitude toward the local newspaper as well for the important role that they have in covering, City Hall and these important services.
It's a rarer and rarer thing these days to actually have a local paper that's accurately covering
Right.
government. So that is a good thing. I saw you nodding your head there, Taylor. We're gonna expand on that. That's important. But I'm curious. So you were a political science undergrad, and remind us, where did you go, Taylor, for your undergrad?
Carroll.
Carroll. Okay. So yeah, tell us about that experience and how you ended up going the MPA route.
Yeah, absolutely. I had graduated a semester early, which was due to COVID. But I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if law was something that I wanted to pursue or to stick with local government. During my time at Carroll, I worked at several different levels. I worked at the state capitol. I worked with the Wisconsin Towns Association. I had worked with the city of Clintonville, and I knew that I liked it, but I didn't know if I loved it. So since I had graduated early, I decided to work for two different law firms. The first law firm, I did divorce and municipal law, which is an interesting combo. I then moved on to a larger law firm where I did criminal and divorce law exclusively. Um, I was taking the LSAT and I was applying for law school as I was preparing also for jury trials and things of that nature. And I realized I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. So I explored the MPA program. Realized that Oshkosh had one. I lived about an hour outside of the Fox Valley. So I figured, worst case scenario, if I don't love law school, then I can apply and we can figure something out. At that point, the program was a hybrid. During like Christmas time, I put in an application and I was kind of nervous because I had heard back from law school, but once again, wasn't in love with it. I had heard back from the committee, I think like a week later, and it was around Christmas time. And I had emailed Dr. Ford and I was like, I have so many questions. Can I do this virtually? What does this look like? Can I still work at the law firm? Things like that. And the staff was super helpful. And they offered to hop on Zoom calls and just talk through things. But as that continued, I realized that law was not something that I loved as much as I loved the municipal world. So I dove headfirst into the MPA program. I did the fast track, so I got it done in a year and a half. Because I didn't know if law school was something that I wanted to still pursue after. Heads up, didn't do it, but I found that I loved it. And it was soon in when we talked about the municipal issues, I knew that that's where my heart was. So I was excited that I picked the right option.
Excellent. So both of you had the experience of having the whole COVID-19, the switch to online. And just curious, how did you find that online experience? I know that we're still, I don't know, I feel like I'm still finding my way in this virtual world, but I'm curious about the pros and cons in your opinion.
I loved it because it gave more flexibility. I was a junior in college when COVID hit. So my junior year was scratched and senior year looked a little different. So I was familiar with the whole online concept. Right after my first semester at Oshkosh, we were fully online, and I took advantage and I moved to Florida because I'd much rather do online school from a beach somewhere than my parents' basement. So I loved it and I thought it was great.
So what about you, Jack?
Yeah, I agree. I had a really good experience with it as well. I like the flexibility that it offered. And I thought too at UW Oshkosh and in this MPA program, the cohort is sort of small enough where you can have an online discussion and it doesn't feel you're talking to, 30 or 40 different people. Like it's a small enough cohort where you can still get to know each other if it's online and communicate really easily in sort of breakout groups like that. So I thought it went really well, and I would suggest it.
And
Good.
to kind of go off of that, Jack, the cohorts, I feel like you get kind of close. So much so that someone from my cohort, Mason Becker, is just down the road in Watertown, and that has a super similar role that I do. So it's nice to have that level of knowledge ahead of time and just call up someone that you've known, for years and be like, hey, what's your thoughts on this? Or, what I mean? That's super helpful.
It's so true, Taylor. And I may have shared this with both of you in class, and I know I've shared this with Dr. Larson, but when 11 years ago, first class I walked into was a budgeting course at UWO to teach. It took me about 20 minutes to realize that I'm not the most important person in this room in terms of helping out the students here. It's the networks, it's the connections that these folks are making, because so many of our students, so many of our graduates, they're all, like you just said, you're all in the same fields. You have those relationships. And I think that's a really big part of a graduate program like ours, is establishing those connections and keeping up those connections. I'm going to keep picking on you, Taylor, because you brought up your work in the state capitol and in that political realm. And I'm just curious if you found having some of that political experience useful in your current position as an economic development director.
Yeah, absolutely. Economic development can be a kind of flashy part of local government when you talk about developments, TIF usage, and things like that. It's been nice that when I can call on my state assembly members when we have a controversial development come forward that may utilize TIF or something like that, tax increment financing, that I can call on them for a letter of support or things like that. Additionally, when we have staff members that need that recognition or we think that they deserve it, example being the fire chief, I can call up the state assemblyman or Ellen Schutz, staff member, and be like, hey, we had a fire chief that just did this like great thing. Can you come on in and recognize them or do something special? It's nice to have that connection there.
Well, you, Jack, how do you find the politics of being a management analyst?
I mean, I do my best to stay out of it and be as
Okay.
neutral as possible. Uh, but we do have our former mayor is a state representative, and that helps a lot with you know, issues that we have in terms of state contracts. And our mayor works for a U.S. representative as well, so that kind of helps with federal contracts too. So we have those tie-ins, and that's nice. But in terms of our aldermen, I just try to keep a smile and do do good work for them. You know, so
That's a very good strategy. It's just it's always fascinating to me. I mean, we talk about professional management and the need to be politically neutral and apolitical, and there's truth to that, but we also have to be comfortable operating in this political sphere. We just do, because it'll find you, whether whether you want to avoid it or not. So I guess shifting over to more of kind of your experience in the classroom, in particular, coming straight out of undergrad into graduate school. You know, most of our students historically have been mid-career people, but we're getting more and we're having more of a focus on students coming straight out of undergraduate. And I think that's more the target audience for today's event and who we'll be sharing this video with after the fact. So just curious if you have any tips for students that might be coming right out of undergraduate into graduate school, especially in something like an MPA program where there's so many professionals.
yeah, I
Go
think it's
ahead.
a good idea. Uh, I think it's a great idea to go from your undergraduate to an MPA. The city of Des Plaines, we have about 5 management analysts, which is a lot, more than most municipalities will have. But it's a position our city manager really believes in, for the reasons Dr. Ford was describing earlier. It's you know, you get exposure to senior staff, you get exposure to the city manager and the city council, and it's kind of to help develop the next generation. And most of the management analysts that we have on staff took that route of going from undergraduate to MPA, and then getting hired into this management analyst position. So I think it's a good idea. And the management analyst position or the local government position, a lot of local governments are very lean and efficient, which means you're going to be taking on a lot of different roles, and some more important than others. And that's what's exciting about this position and that opportunity that you would have going from your undergraduate to your MPA. You can quickly kind of get into a pretty advanced career position. And I don't know much about the private sector, but I know it's a little bit more specialized than the public sector. So that's kind of a unique opportunity that comes from the MPA, that I think is a real advantage to undergraduate students.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jack. Taylor, go ahead.
As someone who took a gap year, I found it a little bit harder to jump into that student role when you're asked to read pages and annotations and longer essays and things like that. I really had to go back to those skills that I had previously learned. I wish I would have almost not taken that gap year and just went straight on into it. I feel like my skills may have been more refined in some sort of way. I felt like that would be super helpful. But to just echo Jack's point, I think to have Gen Z step into roles can really pivot you to long-term success. I think that there's a lot of opportunities of smaller roles that can give you that experience that can project you forward.
Excellent. Well, let's stick with that theme, kind of the skills that are needed in the public sector. And I mean, you're an economic development director, Taylor. I'm just curious in your, you know, both in Whitewater, but in your broader network, you know, what type of skills are employers looking for? What should we as an MPA program be focused on, and what should our students be thinking about?
Yeah, I think having the skill set to jump between acknowledging that this small project means something, but then also being able to take that step back and say, this is just to say this is what the big picture is. When I think of developments, example, we just passed a multifamily unit development. It was good to be focused on that specific development, the location of it, etc. But being able to take that step back and say, okay, is multifamily apartment something that Whitewater needs? Is this a tangible need that we'll foresee in 5 years plus? I think having that skill to zone in and to acknowledge the certain details, but then also to take that step back.
I like that. Go ahead, Jack.
I would agree. The research method skills are really important and something that I use daily in my role.
I
Sort
want
of
to
the
pause.
key.
I want to pause and I want to put that on like a poster board before I teach that class because
Big
yeah,
quote.
students
Um,
don't always believe that during the class.
and it's very important. And it's really a good basis to fall back on as well. The one skill that I'm really trying to develop the most, and I think is most critical among people my generation, is the communication skill that Dr. Ford was talking about earlier. I definitely come from the generation of texting and emailing being much more comfortable for a person than picking up the phone and calling someone, or uh, even speaking publicly or at a city council podium. So that's a very critical skill, and I know among my colleagues who are my age, it's something that we all kind of talk about as not our favorite thing about the job. But the truth is, this role is as much analytical as it is networking and people. So that's really a key skill that I'm focusing on, and that I would suggest to younger people to try to work on as well.
How do you work on that, Jack?
Doing things like this, or going to committee meetings, volunteering for committee meetings, or offering to give a presentation to the council on agenda items. So, you got to take a risk to develop yourself. So,
And that's not always easy. How big
no,
is your council in Des Plaines?
9.
Nine. So you're standing up there in front of nine elected officials. And I say this as
Right.
a former elected official. We all think we're pretty great because the
Mhm.
citizens voted for us. So we can yell at, bureaucrats like you, Jack.
Right.
Uh, no, in all seriousness, it's a stressful thing to get up
No,
there,
it is, and
put yourself out
they're a
there.
very critical group as well. And there's 3 different cameras pointed at the podium as well, and there's all the lighting, and then there's city staff there as well, all kind of waiting on you, big monitors, and it's a pretty intimidating environment, but it has to be done.
Okay. Taylor, any tips for, I mean, as an economic development director, I mean, you have to be in front of your council, in front of your plan commission, in front of these various audiences all the time. How do you get ready and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I serve as staff support on 4 different either commissions, boards, etc. And then the Common Council is a regular speaking time. As Jack had mentioned, I also have like 3 different cameras, and then it's like broadcasted to channel 990, and it's all of that kind of crazy stuff. I know exactly what you mean, Jack, about my our gen just not being super telephone friendly. Like that's not something that I love doing. um Tips and tricks is I find my one person, especially on the common council, that I'm most comfortable with, and just look at them until for some reason I feel more comfortable, speaking. And then I slowly shift my eyes and I, talk to the group more. So um when it comes to different committees, I find that preparing myself and making sure that I have my notes in front of me is my best thing, so that for some reason, if I do stumble, I can look down, center myself and then move forward.
Excellent. And I would always add too that occasionally when you're in a position where you are presenting a lot, you're going to throw some clunkers. And that's okay. There's always the next presentation. And you learn from it. You learn from it. So, Jack, you're in Illinois. You studied here in Wisconsin. And I'm just curious how that translated, how being an out-of-state student. Were there things that were too Wisconsin focused? Were there things you wish you would have learned? Are there things that are just different in the local government world in Illinois?
I thought it transferred very well, and in Illinois, Northern Illinois University is kind of the powerhouse of the MPA. And for the most part, if you're going into local government, um, NIU is kind of like where people go to for that, for hiring. And it's kind of a fraternity among the people in local government here. Um, but for me, as an outsider, someone from UW Oshkosh, a different state and a different university, I really didn't have a lot of struggle, getting interviews or getting my resume in front of people. I don't think that recruiters or hiring managers are looking for any particular university or any brand name, or anything like that. I think if what you put on the paper is good, you're going to get a shot. And then in terms of what was learned here versus there, it's a lot of the same skills that you need, those research methods, those budgeting skills, they're transferable. So, um, I would feel confident saying you can take this course from anywhere and be able to transfer those skills to wherever you work. And that's what gives me a lot of confidence about this position as a public administrator as well, as I think while a lot of laws do vary state by state, I think a lot of the work you can go around the country doing it. And for example, the Oshkosh city manager had experience in, I think it was Kansas, California, and Wisconsin, and his career took him all over the country. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity as well for an MPA graduate. And so, um, yeah, I think the lessons learned were transferable and very critical to my development.
No, very, very well said, Jack. And I think, the point I always like to make is that laws are going to change, ordinances are going to change, needs are going to change. The ability to adapt to those change and to be able to answer questions, utilize analytic methods to give research supported answers to those questions. Those are skills that are probably more important than any moment in time understanding of how a state funding formula might work. Eventually, when you're all city managers and high-powered executives, you have people you hire to take care of that on the day-to-day. You're thinking big picture stuff. Taylor, I'll turn it over to you, and I'm just curious, what are the biggest issues facing the economic development community right now in Wisconsin? Because I mean, that's a incredibly critical role. I mean, that's where the revenue comes from. I mean, your ability to raise your tax levy, your tax base is all dependent on economic development. I'm curious what
Yeah,
issues.
housing is the number one issue. It's not just in Whitewater, it's all over. Finding also workforce affordable housing is absolutely huge. The average price of a home in Walworth County is $337,000. That is way more than what my parents paid. That's way more than what my grandparents paid, and that's way more than what I intended to pay. Finding affordable housing is huge. Additionally, the price to build the home has gone up exponentially, and there just isn't enough housing units available. The City of Whitewater had engaged in a private study that was done by Tracy Cross and Associates, which is in Illinois. But they take a look at Whitewater and the surrounding areas to see that need for housing. The Tracy Cross study showed us that we, in the next year, to hit the population demands, need 300 homes and 700 apartment complexes, which is insane to think about. So the city's really tried to put forth our efforts towards housing. I'm happy to share that in this past year that I've stepped into economic development, we have facilitated the building of 51 homes and then 128 apartment units, which is definitely a step in the right direction, but we still have a long ways to go. But like I said, this isn't just a Whitewater issue. This is a state issue. When I was at the Wisconsin Economic Development Association conference 2 weeks ago, that's when I'm hearing from people in Madison, people in Rhinelander, people in Wausau, people in Oshkosh, is that housing is a huge need.
It's every community survey I work on, every consulting project, every conversation. Housing is always the number one issue. I'm curious, Jack, similar deal in Illinois, or what are the big issues facing Des Plaines?
Similar issue in Des Plaines. Our community and economic development director describes Des Plaines as on its third life. If you're not familiar with Des Plaines and its proximity to Chicago, it's kind of one of the first collar cities outside of the city of Chicago. So it was developed early on, and it's about 3 generations of people have lived in the homes now that are available in the market in Des Plaines, which I think is good, and it's good for residents because these are a lot of affordable houses that are within the region below market price. So we're able to offer that to new residents, which I think is a good thing, that we've maintained our housing inventory and it's still affordable. What we struggle with in terms of economic development is, again, a lot of our buildings are really old. So we don't have new land to develop on. All of our projects are revitalization and redevelopment, which is really expensive because it's all brownfields and typically requires demolition, if not millions of dollars in just renovation costs. So that's a big factor that developers in our community uh, are working through. And it's a big issue that the city is working through as well as how do we kind of revitalize our downtown with all this old inventory. We have a lot of residential that's being built in the downtown, but there's not a lot of entertainment or retail in our downtown. So that's kind of a big project our CED department's working on right now, and definitely just the just the age of our city is kind of the big hurdle for us.
Oh yeah, you're giving me flashbacks to I think what 6 or 7 years on plan commission in Oshkosh, and every time there's a brownfield, these poor developers would come in, they'd have their budget, and then they'd do their soil samples. I'm like, here it comes. I mean, never comes back clean. Always just massive add and cost to the project because old tannery or whatever it was, always everything's polluted. That's what I've learned. But anyways, before we turn it over to the crowd to ask questions, I'm curious, where do you see your career going? What are your long-term career goals? Do you want to be a city manager? Do you want to do something else? I'll start with you, Taylor.
Yes, I do want to be a city manager or a city ad administrator. We'll see where that direction takes me. I told myself I want to get my international economic development certification, which takes 4 years to do. So we'll see once I pass that first goal if I can get to the second one. But yeah, I think long term.
Well, I will say here in Wisconsin, no offense to Jack, there's certainly a need, and we're certainly starting to see generational turnover, and we need good people. So I hope that you do stay in Wisconsin, Taylor, and I do hope you stay on that career trajectory. Jack.
I would agree. I also would love to be a city manager someday, and I do have a lot of dreams of being a city manager in the Driftless region of Wisconsin. I think it's such a beautiful area, and it would be, I think, a great way to live, to be like sort of in a country house and deliver effective services as a city manager in that area. So that's kind of my dream, and I hope to build up the skills to be able to get there someday.
No, this is important to note, Jack, that if you were to get a job as a city manager in the drift list, that I would be applying for some low-level position where I don't have a lot of responsibility, where I can maximize my time on the trout streams, because that is some of the best trout fishing in the world. And I'd prefer to do that over anything else in the world, aside from this right here, obviously. But no, good stuff. Anyone else in the audience have any questions for our esteemed guests, Taylor and Jack? Anything about their educational paths, anything about their career trajectories, or anything else? Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I'm wondering if I could maybe put a couple of other people on the spot. We have at least 2 other MPA alums in our participant list. One is Beth Boucher, and the other is Ben Kromenauer. Beth or Ben, any comments that you would like to make, brief or long, about your experience? Ben put in the chat.
You did put me on the spot, Sam.
I
Thank you.
did. I know.
Welcome, and first of all, Taylor, Jack, thank you. I appreciate your time. I'm proud of you guys. It's neat to see you guys step up, and Jack, I know you're a little nervous about public presenting, but you did wonderful. And Taylor, nice to see you. Glad you're back in Wisconsin, and congratulations on your shift. For me, I was, call it a non-traditional, in the sense that I didn't come straight out of undergrad into my graduate program. I attended Oshkosh for 1 year because I didn't get on campus housing in Milwaukee, and my dad and I wisely thought maybe I shouldn't be a freshman in downtown Milwaukee off campus, since I had kind of a rowdy beginning. But I actually got my undergraduate in Green Bay in urban and regional studies and planning. I always thought I'd be the architect. I decided to shift course and instead of designing buildings, I get to help design a community as a whole. And that's one of the great things that this program did in my undergraduate degree, and even the decade I spent between the two of them, was helping shape a community from the ground up. I started as an intern, got my first job as a copy boy, making 14 bucks an hour at the City of Oshkosh, actually. But it gave me benefits, and it gave me a chance to get to know people and really put the time into figuring out what I wanted to be. So when I get to attend these sessions like this and learn about new professionals, I'm excited to see that you're interested in getting into it right away. If you know you want to be in this field, go for it. I'm a decade later and starting my municipal management career. And even though I've been in the field for 20 years now, or almost, only 9 of it's been in management. And, maybe if I started a decade ago, I'd retire a decade faster. So proud of you guys. Thank you. And it's a pleasure seeing you, albeit on video today.
Well, Ben, I have to ask a follow-up since I've been peppering everybody with questions. So you're a city administrator, a village administrator in Wisconsin. What has been most surprising in that role? Is there something in particular you didn't expect that's taken up a lot of your time and energy?
Well, I think one thing that you always have to realize is that I've never been afraid to get to know individuals, but the amount of times you have to try to remember something very, very specific about somebody to try to build in that relationship was a little surprising for me. And it's the little things like remembering that Mike likes to fish on the Willow River or the Willow Creek in Waushara County, or that Sam has connections with Colorado and my brother and I love to visit Colorado. It's those little snippets that I had to learn to try to remember. So when you do have that conversation with somebody that you don't see as often, they will remember you more because you made it a point to remember something about them. And that took a long time for me to remember and to really get decent at it. I'm still practicing it. I don't remember names very well, but I remember situations and I remember little snippets, and it helps me when I don't remember somebody's name for whatever reason.
A really good answer, Ben. I'm glad you brought that up because that is something that we teach in our program. I call them the softer skills, and maybe that's not the right way to put it, but culture building and managing people and understanding people and emotional intelligence. Those are real skills that take practice and take time and probably matter more than just about any of the hard skills that you can teach. You can be a master of budgeting, but if you're alienating everybody you work with, who really cares, right? You're not going to be successful. Taylor, if you're trying to court somebody to the City of Whitewater, maybe the finances work out perfectly, but if, again, you're alienating them or there's a personality conflict, they might go somewhere else. So really, really good example, Ben. Beth, should we try to put you on the spot?
Boy, I tell you, I was not prepared to be on camera today, so thanks for that. Hi everybody. Hi Taylor. Hi Jack. So good to see you guys again. I am a non-traditional student, as in I started college way later than most folks do. However, I did go right from undergrad into the MPA program, and especially for someone my age, it was a really great thing to be able to do, so that it was just a really nice, smooth transition to be able to do that. The other thing I would add is that my undergrad was in human services, which is maybe not the traditional starting point for some folks, but it was useful to my MPA. And I will say that not everyone goes into city management or city government. That wasn't my path. And, but the skills and the classes that you take were are all still really, exceptionally relevant to what I'm doing now. And, so just all the skills from the classes translate so well to just a whole variety of different career areas that you could go into. And one thing for sure I'll say is that Dr. Ford and Dr. Larson are super great at helping you navigate that and figure that out and point you in the right directions that are going to be a good fit for how you want to end up. So I really appreciated that part of the MPA program for sure. And if you want an internship, if you want experience, there's so many connections, not only with the professors, but with other students in the courses that, you know, they're going to find something to help you.
No. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Well, first of all, Ben and Beth, thank you for chiming in. Beth, can you quick tell people what your current position is?
Sure. So I'm back on campus and I actually work for the UWO NSF Advanced Grant. So I'm the program coordinator with that grant. And my job is basically to work with the whole team of researchers. And the most awesome part is that we're working with policy and we're helping, you know, really push forward equity within the STEM department at UWO.
Thanks, Beth. Mike, can I make a little comment on, I think, things that Jack and Taylor and Ben and Beth mentioned, and then I have a question for Jack and Taylor again. One thing that I really want to highlight is, and I'm going to put this in the chat too, is we've developed this MPA mentorship program for our new students. And so that started just a couple of years ago. So it kind of came after Jack and Taylor in a more formal way, where every new student gets matched with either an MPA alumni of our program or someone who has an MPA. So Mark Roloff is one of the folks who Jack had mentioned. And I want to say thank you to Jack, because part of the reason that this developed is because I was having a conversation with Jack once when he was a student, and he told me, you know, for people who like don't have a background in public admin, it would be really helpful if we could like have some kind of connection to like city managers or people out in the community that are doing this work. So Jack planted the seed for me on that. And then we have an alumni board as well of MPA alums who we talked through kind of what that might look like. And then we decided, oh, let's create this program. So you can see like other people who've graduated who now formally serve as mentors. Jack is one of them. Taylor, I may be reaching out to you to see if you have time. And if you don't, that's okay. But I'm just wondering, Jack and Taylor, can you talk a little bit briefly about like what kind of in some ways, like for someone who's a little nervous to like have a mentor or do this type of program without kind of having a background or knowing how to get plugged in, like what role does mentorship play or has it played for you in your career trajectory?
I can start us off. I felt mentorship was crucial. I previously had worked at the city of Clintonville as their intern. At that time, Kaz Muskie was their assistant city admin. She now is their full city admin. Kaz was crucial, especially when I was finishing up the MPA program and I was applying for jobs. I was asking her about my resume, what looks good, what doesn't look good. Is this too ambitious of a role that I should be applying for? What is like the cap? I felt like she was crucial. And still, as I talk about future career moves and things like that, like before I did the shift here, I talked to her. I felt like that was crucial. Even Ben, when I was in the early stages, I reached out to Ben and asked him for thoughts on my resume and things like that. I think getting that feedback is crucial and super helpful. Also, if you are new to the public government side, what I would tell you is to email your local city manager or some department that you feel like you have a connection to, and ask them questions or say, hey, can I come shadow you? I'm a grad student. I found that was super beneficial, and I found that I made some major connections that way.
I would agree to that last point that Taylor had. I've noticed a lot of people in this, especially in local government, are very motivated by service. So I think if you reached out to them and asked them if you could or if they could mentor you, or if you could shadow them, or if they had any advice for you, they would be more than willing to do that. For me, a mentor is very important because they're sort of a neutral guide for you. You can ask them questions you might not be comfortable asking a boss or a peer. and they can kind of give you their honest feedback about it. And in the same way that Taylor's used a mentor before, whether that's submitting an application or a lot of times you'll come across projects in your work that maybe you've never dealt with before, but whether that's your mentor or someone who's in your network, they likely have gone through that before and they can kind of give you advice on how to navigate that situation. So for me, just having that access to a mentor is kind of like a safe space for me. And it's nice to have someone who you know you can go to who's going to give you honest feedback.
Great stuff. Well, we have 4 minutes left. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the group, Taylor or Jack?
I met with someone today, and I don't know if she was just being nice, but she asked me what MPA program I went through, and I had said Oshkosh, and she then said, well, I can so tell because the people that come out of Oshkosh's program have incredible personable skills, are very friendly, forward. They know how to make those tough calls and things like that, which I don't know if she was just being nice. But I didn't even mention that I was doing this today at all, but I thought it was just a kind thing to say. So a nice plug for Oshkosh.
Let's get her on a billboard. Let's track her down. I love it. Thank you for sharing that, Taylor. That's very encouraging.
I would agree. I think I noticed the same thing among the cohort of people who I was with in my MPA program. There are a lot of really good people who are doing really important work, and it's kind of inspiring to be in that network. And as well as the professors who are at UW Oshkosh, it's a great balance between learning the kind of critical research skills and analytical skills that you're going to need to do your job, as well as learning those sort of softer skills and putting an emphasis on, going the extra step in your role as a public administrator and making sure that everybody his voices are represented and heard.
Well said. Well, thank you so much, Jack and Taylor, and thank you everybody else who attended. Like I said, we're going to post this online. You can always find it on the Whitburn Center website. We have a whole bunch of materials there. So all of the events we've had since 2021, and there's like 20 plus up there now, which is pretty cool. We also have all our research reports you can check out. If you have any questions, you can always email us at whitburncenter@uwosh.edu or email Dr. Larson or myself directly. Next Wednesday, we'll be hosting an event November 20th at noon, another virtual event with Dr. Gabe Locano. I've only known him for 11 years. I cannot pronounce his name, but it's exciting. I'm more of a Mike Ford kind of guy. He wrote a book, and his topic is the history of local taxation in Oshkosh. So it's kind of interesting, the local history of the property tax, and it's maybe focused on Oshkosh, but it's really applicable to kind of why our tax code looks the way it does in the state of Wisconsin and local government generally. So if you're interested in the history of taxation, I highly encourage you to come check that out, and we'll send more details about that closer to the date. Also want to do a quick reminder that we are having a workshop in person in Oshkosh on October 29th from 11 to 1:30 called Overcoming Our Ideological Divides. And this is our third workshop that's part of this larger project where we got a couple grants from the Carter Center and the, what's his name?
Herbert Cole.
Yeah, he was only the senator in Wisconsin for like entire lifetime. Cole Philanthropies. So like I said, this is the third workshop here, and it's being presented by Kate Zeinert, who is the executive director of the Winnebago County Resolution Center. And it's a fabulous workshop. It's free, it's open to the public, though we only have 8 spots remaining technically. Though, as Lisa pointed out this morning at her meeting, that we might be able to fit in a few extra. That just might not be food for you. But it's going to be at the Culver Center. You can go to our website and you can register. So please do check that out. And thank you all for coming. And thank you again, Taylor and Jack. It's so cool to see your career successes, and not to make this too much of a love fest, but we are proud of you. It's one of the coolest parts of this job is to see our graduates have such a real world impact. It's pretty awe-inspiring.